All right, thanks so much, everybody, for waiting. I think the sound is live. I think the chat is live, and I'm gonna scooch the painting over one little bit, and then we're ready to go. So today, I thought I would begin a two-session still life painting. I've got a toned acrylic canvas. I set up a bunch of fake fruit. And before I get started, I just want to use my Hi, I'm Mary at Insight Fine Art Studio. I'm going to walk through the process of painting this still life in oil today. The reference, I've taken a photograph, although I am going to be looking at the actual setup and painting from life. But I did take a photograph, and I'm going to put that on the Insight Fine Art Studio website. So that should be up in the next day or two. All right, let's get started. First things first, let's get a drawing on the canvas with just a little bit of turp, hopefully clean enough turp from the top of the jar. All right, so thinking about the composition, I was looking at this as I set it up, and in my mind, it's a bit of an X-shaped composition, but I think I'm going to crop it. I'm going to stick a little bit to almost the left side of that image. Let's see. With a little bit of turp on the palette, I've got some burnt sienna, and this is primed in an acrylic paint, by the way. I just threw a layer of watery acrylic on a few minutes ago. It's dry enough. And now I'm just mixing up some transparent dark colors like quinacridone magenta and ultramarine blue and a little bit of alizarin crimson. All right. It's nice and thin, so I can kind of sketch with it. And I hold the brush very loosely in my hand here from the back, you can see. And I want to tell you, looking at this, I feel like the focal point is the left hand yellow pear with those little leaves and that little explosion of tangerines, kind of clementines, whatever they are, right there. So there's this directional how. I hope that makes sense. And it's just starting with that, identifying the area that you're interested in bringing forward, bringing out of your background, putting more interest in. And from there, all other things are kind of supporting characters. All right, that went pretty quickly. I'm already like fairly well established here. I didn't mean to go that far into the drawing, but it is such a forgiving and nice and organic subject that the composition, I mean, there's accuracy and then there's being tedious. I don't want to be tedious with every mark. I want these objects to sort of serve a more abstract purpose. I'm not trying to duplicate them just to duplicate them. So, in that sense, I don't strive for 100% accuracy. I'm a realist painter in some ways. And in some ways, I don't find that those are my interests. What do y'all think about that? Okay, so we were talking before about the X shape, and I'm really emphasizing this kind of directional quality coming in from this way. There's a lot of contrast here that I think is really interesting. Lots of little marks. And I don't mean to paint those little marks in right now. I'm just trying to get the energy of that area and the feel, more of the directional quality, more of the X shape, less of the objects right now. And Still Life just offers such a great opportunity to explore these ideas because you can put objects in any arrangement that you like and then interact with those objects. You add light, and light creates these shadows that are their own element. And so there's just so many possibilities for composition and representation and finding an approach that is somewhat based on observation and yet somewhat expressive. I'm gonna check this little chat. Ooh, thank you. Oh, yay, yay, yay. I see your chat, Susan. I only have one painty hand, so that's all I could type. But thank you for commenting. I was just gonna go check if there was volume or if I was just here in the studio chatting to myself, but thank you. All right. So, I mean, yeah, I kind of actually like where it's going so far, but maybe I'm in a little trouble with where the second yellow pair is ending up. Something slightly off. I want less space between them than I actually have. And I think I will just fake them closer together. That's totally fine with me. The other thing that I was, initially thinking when I looked at this setup was that I don't love the grapes. I like them as an element. They're a little bit kind of long, skinny. I don't want to emphasize them too much. I want them to be sort of like hinted at. So I'm going to try to kind of start that early on. I thought maybe I could disguise them against this very similarly colored peach. I thought I could let the bottom kind of drop out a little bit and just get lost. And then I also thought that I could make it a little lighter and less contrasty. I just really like that instead of a really heavy dark element there. I feel like that'll straighten out the bottom if it's too heavy and dark. So I'm going to take that up a little lighter. Oh, I have some thoughts. And here I just added a little bit of quinacridone red to this color so that I can think more about these being like a pink. I know I just really envision that happening. And I also think that that could be a really nice color to repeat over here. Uh-huh. And this could be its own little shape. Now I see I have a little bit of this like pink background color that is, where I'm getting this from, but really I'm kind of creating like this weird pinwheel shape that hopefully is interesting and like kind of works. All right, let's see. Dragging this out a little bit. I don't want to lose that nice graceful kind of X shape thing that I have going. And then we're going to like cool the color down just because we've crossed into where this more greenish color is. I think I even want to go a little teal in this initial block in, just for the effect we'll have against each when that comes up. And I can kind of use that dark color here to define the leaves. And this is the area right here that I think is pretty interesting. And this is the area that I think is pretty problematic. Choosing the word, I was like, dangerous? I don't know. It's not dangerous. I mean, it's only a painting, you know, I'm not that dramatic, but I think it's a little bit challenging and unresolved. And I feel slightly uncertain about what I'm going to do there. Like, I don't want this bright yellow pear right there. As I talk about it, here I sit defining it even more. And I really just want it to kind of disappear. So I'm going to take a big brush. I don't really want that element. Much like the bottom of these grapes, it's just too much in this space. It's too much. I want something there, but I only want like a hint of it. And that did something, at least in person. I don't know if you can see that like on the screen. I have another screen here. I'll look. What does it look like? Yeah, it softens it up a little bit. I think you can kind of tell where I'm going with that. All right, and then I'm remembering to back up from this painting and like really walk back and see. All right, I'm trying to get like another overlapping S curve for this area. I think if I can kind of make that into something, that might save it. Maybe I'm just setting myself up a problem. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. We have some cast shadows that are elements here. I want those to be fairly neutral, so I'm doing like a little two-layer wash. First I did this blue. Actually never done that before, consciously, but hey, that's cool. Kind of like that idea. Let's try it again. That worked well. Let's do more of that till it's way too much. My usual strategy. How about you? Okay, so no, but what I was doing there, I just took a little bit of that teal that I had on the palette. It was kind of like a nice color that I thought, oh, I'll put that in for the cast shadow. I threw that down. And then what do you know, as I worked into that with some magenta, I think it looks really neat, at least in person. I'm not sure how that's reading, but that's about as far as I want to go into the cast shadow here to tie that together. Really want all of this to be really brushy. I want this to be a very loose painting. I think it's definitely starting out that way. What do you think? Captures the frantic energy that is coursing through my life lately. But a lot going on. All right. I do want to have a little bit of this beautiful light color. I could paint this greenery or foliage almost forever. I think it's lovely. Love that color. I think I could stand with another one or two leaves over to the left. Oh, I really like the idea of putting this kind of blue-green leaf color right against a similar value of pink, which will go in there shortly. All right. As quickly as it came, the drawing phase is now past. So let's get into some opaque color mixing. I'm going to get my turp out of the way. Hello. I'll also type hi with my very painty hand. I really wish I could type back. I should use like voice to text or something. Then I should just talk. Technology. All right. So here we go. We're going to do a little mixing. I always put my ingredients right out in the center so that I can really work with them and I don't feel like I have to struggle and keep everything perfectly clean. I'm starting with that pink color back there, that like salmony pink color. And putting something out that will nicely dull that, and that is some Viridian green. It's going to start out very, very saturated, and that's not necessarily what we want. All righty. Now just to get this paint moving in this layer, I'm going to put out a little bit of oil. I'm looking at this color and I think I definitely want to put a little yellow into it. There's going to be so much yellow. Oh, that's so much better already. Let's go. Just putting this color on in an opaque way, seeing, what I think of it, but it's not a permanent choice yet. I want it to be a little bit more zingy. It could look very different later once I put like things next to it, but I think just even starting out, I added just a little more quinacridone to it. You want to put that right next to the blue to see that. Wow. All right, I'm going to spread that out a bit. And for that, I want that to be a little less opaque at this stage. I want a little canvas showing through. I like it a lot better when I see a little light of the canvas. So I'm going to thin that out a little. And I'm just taking a touch of turp for that. There's already a little oil, linseed oil. Okay. So here's an important time in the life of this leaf. This leaf is going to be defined right now. So although some of the brushwork that I want to do, I want to have a quality of being spontaneous. I don't necessarily want them to be haphazard. I want a little color change, maybe towards something slightly cooler. So that was alizarin. We'll have some leaves here. Maybe I'll just kind of leave just almost a hint of space, like a directional quality that could be a brush stroke or a leaf or something later. We don't know. I'm leaving my options open. And furthermore, I want some texture variation because this is just such a lovely place to get it. Being the background, reinforcing that initial X shape or composition. And I don't know, lately I've justified my use of small and singular brushes by saying that I do love the directional quality of seeing so many kind of almost parallel brush strokes. I mean, you can really get descriptive with how you're changing the direction of those marks. I think that's a good way to think of it. Almost like cross hatching. So it's not a huge paintbrush, but I just feel like that's right for me right now. Oh, good question, Gary. Now, negative spaces is probably mostly how I define items. I really do think I am so much more comfortable, like, I don't know, describing things like that and seeing things like that and kind of breaking things down like that. I'm not sure that that's not just like a natural, like we each have our own kind of tendencies. And I think some people really just see lines so much more easily. So that's my thought on that. But yeah, I think negative spaces are a great way to draw things because you can often spot these differences more easily there when you have this symbolic idea of like what the object looks like. The negative spaces aren't going to be as easy for your mind to overlay some sort of false idea on, right? Like they're just easier to spot the shapes in. There's a lot of drawing errors, I think, and difficulty for myself and like everyone. I think stems from the fact that we overlay our symbols of these items over what we're actually seeing. And so it becomes really difficult to actually see, where to put things and what's wrong with the drawing. And absolutely, this goes double for me. This is everybody's problem, but negative spaces, like I said, you just really can, not you don't have a symbol for that little space between the leaf and the pear. All righty, let's see. Let's get some green that makes sense. I find green one of those colors that everybody just universally knows is difficult and varies so much, right? But luckily we have a nice reference and we can definitely match colors. So we'll go with that. I don't want anything terribly, or I have a ton of white on the palette, so I don't really need that. I don't want anything terribly saturated and clashy, but I do think of this as like a very bright, like festive. It's festive. I don't know. It's cheerful. Yeah, cheerful, not festive. Um, I don't want it to be like that depressing painting of fruit. There's no purpose to that. All right. But at the same time, we don't want to, lose the effectiveness of our colors by keying everything to be bright and saturated and full out, right? You have to have some moments that are a little bit toned down. And what better way to tone down a green than with a beautiful kind of salmony pink magenta color, such as this? And we'll do so now. So because it came from elsewhere in the painting, I think that's a really good sign. We always like to create those harmonies. And scooping it all together. I actually kind of like it. It's a little different. I know that there's a more warm yellow. Probably need better paint out, but that's okay. This might do the job. Okay. Yeah. Like I said, yellow, so many of these colors I think will be made more vibrant and also more harmonized because they're all going to have like a little bit of this feeling of yellow. Let's find a brush. All right, this is an actually really nice paintbrush. And look, it's not so tiny. All right, let's go. Here's some oil on the palette right next to the color, just so I can kind of get that moving. And we're going to take our brush and really kind of fill that up a lot. And I also want like a little extra yellow off to the side for brush mixing purposes. And if necessary, I will get more paint out. Just you watch. I sure will. Okay. So there we have it. Let's see how it looks next to that green, or next to the pink. I think it's going to look really, really cool. I'm just going to make that mark continue and become a leaf for no real reason. I think it'll be fun. Interesting. There's some shadow shapes in here. It definitely doesn't feel quite warm enough to me, and I really want some additional India yellow on the palette. I'm sensing that this is the color that I need. So make a short detour and take this color. And it just has this like really zingy, almost like acidic green quality. I love this color. It is so beautiful. All right. Yeah, I think that's a little bit more where I'm going. I'm not going to do too much differentiating right now between the lighter areas, but I will probably leave it pretty open in terms of like the marks that I'm making so that I can go back through and like kind of fill in some color variation here. I'll change up a little bit too. Hmm. I want to lose this value up a little bit, a little lighter here so that I can decrease the value of the grapes and hopefully create less contrast as we move away from that X shape. We don't want to add extra contrast that's going to detract from the composition. So this is where you can really make calls, especially with still life, but really with anything. I mean, there are ways to, kind of compose and push and pull different things through a composition. I think with any subject, but still life makes it a little easier, a little more like, it's at the forefront of what you're doing a little more readily than if you're representing something that you can't set up like a street scene or a figure or something, right? So still like this great to experiment with that. Okay. And now I have this little darker green color on my brush, and I'm just kind of putting that along this compositional line. Really getting ready for those like warmer peachy colors. Mm-hmm. Darker blue in here. Ooh, and back to teal. Always. Always back to teal. If you're not familiar with cobalt teal and you happen to be an oil painter, do yourself a favor, get yourself some cobalt teal. It is just the most beautiful color, and I think it's a lot like the cerulean blue that we've had as like a standard on the palette. I think cerulean blue is pretty universally standard. And I did not put it out today, and I don't miss it at all because I have cobalt teal. If you have any special, lovely colors that you just can't do without, or you're just interested in learning more about color, post a comment if you would under this video. And if you've made it this far and you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. I am 1/10 of the way to my goal. I'm going to reach it. Oh, yeah. My goal is 1,000 subscribers so that you could go live from a cell phone. And I want to do that so I could take some live painting sessions with me on the road when I go plein air painting this summer and spring and fall and not winter. I'm not going in the winter. But you know, like let's try for it. Let's see what we can do. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends. Please subscribe. Okay, so I'm really just going around with these darker shadow colors because that dark shape really is the composition. It's already light underneath. Like the underpainting is essentially, it's not going to be all that different visually in terms of color and value. It's a little different, but they're fairly close. Um, for me, adding these dark shapes is really the structure of that composition. So, but I'm going to go in now with like just a little color to block in the leaves here. It is very not gray, but I'm okay with that. I think I'm going to try it out. Let's see what's going to happen. What's the worst that could happen? It looks pretty blue right now, but I kind of suspect that as I move through this, I might be able to make that blue feel a little bit less out there. And I'll do that by making other things equally out there. I really feel like you kind of give yourself a lot of permission in paintings to create like whatever color rules or drawing rules you want to create. As long as the idea, the feeling behind it is unified, I think it works. I think people really, you know, striving for some other style sometimes over work areas. Myself, you know, this goes double for me, is what I keep saying, but it's true. I think I'm just going to try and lean in more to that natural style, the kind of first pass mark without editing so much. Wouldn't that be great? Let's all try for that. And now I'm just kind of going back through this background color and I'm just trying to cover ground essentially. I want to see this not blocked in necessarily, but um, looking like itself. So that just means that, you know, I'll use that underpainting for like a stand-in for the time being, but I want to see like what the painting's going to be like when it's done and overall. And so I am just kind of getting some, you know, ground covered. I think that's the name of the game. We can come back and will. This is I'm intending this to be a 2-session painting, so I will put the reference up on the website if you want to paint from a reference or set up something similar for yourself, or just come back next week and hang out and listen to me yap about painting. But yeah, I think today, if I can just get like the visual essentials before we go today, I think that would be ideal. That's my goal. All right. So let's see. What is next? Let's get some oranges covered in. This is just going to be an all business. It's down to business. It's slogging it out. I'm looking at the clock. I have about 10 minutes, and it's giving me reminiscent of Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, the Art 64 competition. I was just thinking about that today. Do I want to try that again? I don't know. the thought. I welcome your opinions. A lot of people didn't really love that competition, if you're familiar with it, but the 1 hour paint off where you're paired against another artist. It seems an odd thing to compete with, but at the same time, a novel way to spend an afternoon, no? Very novel. All right, let's get this color in. I'm just using like a quinacridone red for the shadow color here, just to kind of give that some definition and shape. And this is probably too big of a space. And this is why we do the block. I have so much more I can do with this. I can create like another, sense of like something else, or maybe some greenery that comes through. But I think the block in, like getting to this stage, it's so important to see this blocked in and know where you might want to do a little refining. And refining might mean like adjusting the color, but that doesn't mean, you can be really haphazard with it at this time in this layer. Do you want to think of like any refining that we're going to do as more adding to instead of changing and correcting? A little bit bigger so that the pear doesn't seem like gigantic. And now is the time where we will be adding some beautiful, fresh yellow paint to the palette. It's going to be awesome. I'll actually have something to mix with. This is not the highest quality paint that I could have chosen today, but we're just going to make it work for now. And I typically like Gamblin. That's my go-to brand. That is one of their products that I used for that light yellow. And I do recommend for like a student grade product, that's pretty good. But that is indeed their 1980 student brand. Just what I happen to have on hand today. With the Gamblin. I was wrong. I'll probably get like a cease and desist for talking about them. No, I think the 1980 is not as good, but let's look, let's compare. What if I have a perfectly clean brush? I'm betting that's going to help a whole lot. All right, let's see. Okay. Oh, now I get it. Were you talking about Art 64? All right. Thank you, Susan. It takes me a minute, honestly. Okay, this is a wild idea, but see this soapy light teal color? I just added a tiny bit of yellow to it, and I think this is going to be just an absolutely stunning highlight color for these. Yeah, look at that. The clementines have beautiful. And it's like a light green. Who would have thunk? I'm even going to put it down on that bare canvas for now. And we'll throw that a few other places just for good measure, like, for example, back there. And we'll put that in here. A little in that shadow color. Do more in the pear. And the pear is like definitely, or not pear, peach. Again, I'm leaving like open spaces so that I can come back through. And let's go for, but my goodness, I'm really migrating out of each area pretty quickly. I'm just trying to get this block in, but keep it loose and keep it from feeling, I don't know, like it's stagnant, you know, like I can't get locked into one area. I just really want to, that. Some leaves through here. I do believe I'm going to need to go back into this background, and this pear looks kind of, yeah, that seems a little more like it. Just little drawing corrections that hopefully won't ruin the entire painting and make me, you know, terribly sad and collapse in a heap. Little drawing corrections. You all know what I mean. As long as we have this lovely magenta color on the brush, let's go for a quick block in here on these grapes. Just making some like interesting marks so that I can kind of give that a little more character maybe. You know, when you're painting your faux fruits, it's important to kind of embellish a little bit. And it's not always the easiest thing to kind of visualize, like how would this real peach look? So one way to create a little more like random feel is really to hold your brush from far back and then let the brush sort of move across the canvas in a really natural way. All right. So yeah, giving it like a little element of chance. And into this color. Move this so we can see this properly. I should move my spindrift far away from that. Okay. So the pear color. Definitely starting with the more lemon yellow, but I also have some cad yellow medium. That looks pretty good. I don't mind that. I'll just go ahead and kind of ruin that color with a dirty brush. That's fine. I'm not going to let that stop me. We're just going to go for it again. I've cleaned the brush off. No more going to ruin this color. It's going to be fine. Thinking about this form, I really want to make some marks that kind of come around the pear instead of just following the contour. So a little cross contour information. Nice when the brush has a little extra color on it, a different color. You can kind of get some, and you can see it there, I hope, like a little variation even on this early stage block in, just to kind of, again, get some directional qualities, because that's what it's all about. I'm brush mixing a little bit of the shadow color. I think it gets more green. Mhm. And I just pivoted over to the peach because I just had the right color. I had this sense that this was going to be like a really good purpley kind of shadow color. I'm going to try that there. And again, I'm going to move this through the grapes so that they're related and they're creating like a little connection. Mm-hmm. And I might as well just go in here a little bit more. Everything has to get covered, and I think even just a light layer of this color to paint over. I'm really making sure that I don't have like a ton of textured paint where I don't want it. And where I might not want it would be any place that I haven't decided on a final shape or line. I certainly don't want a big, thick mark of paint that will be visible and problematic. So, all right. And I am coming up on time for today. I have it just about blocked in, but let's just see if we can't get a little bit more covered. I'm going to make sure my composition is sort of defined. That's the most important. And I think if I well, the end of a painting session when your palette has so much useful stuff on it and you can just grab colors you've already made and make them into something else if you're lucky. Area is unresolved, and I'm going to resolve it as quickly as possible if I can. I think I can. Let's try it. Define the light edge of the leaf here. There we go. Not that we have to go with every detail from this, but it sure makes life easier if you're like looking at something rather than you have to fully make it up. A lot of this is like background. We can pop in the green color, and there's a dark shadow, which currently I have teal. A little strange, and I think that's why it's kind of not visually popping together yet, but that's okay. I do like the color. Might do it if I fill this in. Mm-hmm. So we're a few minutes over. Promise I will wrap it up. I don't really see what this is going to do, this little yellow. I grabbed a new brush. Mhm. All right. I am starting to kind of see it. I think it's like savable in this area. It's going to be okay. I don't have enough information in, but I can kind of see the directional qualities. I'm okay with it. For this part, I think I'm just going to take a little bit of a dark green. All right, that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks so much for tuning in, and really appreciate it. And thanks for the comments and the you know, feedback on is there sound, everything that you've let me know so far has been incredibly helpful. Thanks for being there. We'll see you guys next time.